My name is Muhammad Lee. I am from New York City, and I'm Muslim. Back in 2015. I would always get bullied in middle school for being Muslim. People would call me terrorist and other names, but nobody came close to these two bullies of mine whose names were Frankie and Johnny. They would go to an extreme. The things they did to me included pantsing me, beating me up, chasing me, shoving me into lockers, and dunking my head into toilets, all because I was Muslim. I had some friends with me who weren't Islamophobic, but didn't really come to me defense when they saw me getting bullied. Now, I will get to the point of this story. It was around the first weekend of December, and winter was approaching. My parents had nothing to do that weekend, so they wanted to go upstate to our country house, which is in the Catskill Mountains. He invited my friend Jaden to come with me since he was and is still my best friend. We drove out of the city at around 6 on Friday night and got to the house at around 8:30 to 9. When we got there, Will unpacked, took our shoes off, got dressed into night clothes, brushed our teeth, and Will went to bed. My parents stayed in their bedroom, while Jaden stayed in the same bedroom. I was in the next morning, wet to break fast. And after that, me and Jaden wanted to go geocaching since we lived right next to a state forest that had plenty of hiking trails. Me and Jaden loved geocaching, and we have been doing it ever since first grade. My parents told us that we were allowed to do it, but we were only allowed to do it for a maximum of 4 hours. So a set off an hour and a half passed by, and we already found like 4 or 5 treasures. So on our hike, we wrote our names down on a sheet with a pen to say that we were here, traded valuable objects, and placed them back in the hiding spots. We were now at a waterfall. The site was very pretty, and the next cache was 0.4 mile away. As we were walking, talking, and trying to locate the next geocache, we heard a best sound from behind us. We turned around and we saw something even more scarier than the scariest horror movie ever. There were 2 people, and take a guess who it was. Frankie and Johnny, my 2 biggest bullies in school. How in God's name were they in the same place that we were in? Did they secretly have a house up here? Did they follow us? How is this even possible? They couldn't have gotten here by themselves since they were the same ages. I was, and we all were in middle school. My mind was still processing all of it. I said to both of them, "What the heck are you two doing here? How did you guys even find us?" Frankie then spoke and said, "You thought you could escape us, but no, you're wrong." I remember very descriptively that he said this. My eyes gazed in front of me, and I saw a large knife in Frank's hand that really frightened me. All of a sudden, Johnny sprinted and walked towards me, and before I could even run, he grabbed my entire body from around the back. It was impossible to escape. He held me with a monster grip. He was staking me somewhere. We were going right to the edge of where the fall was. There were no bars to prevent us from falling into the deep water below. It was all open. I was now scared for my life. Actually plan on killing me. I didn't want to know. I heard Jaden wailing for help. It turned around only to see Frankie holding him with a knife to his neck. Both of our lives were now in danger. I was now at the edge of where the fall was. As I was still trying to break free from Johnny, he started to speak. Ivory, clearly remember him saying to me, "This is what you're going to get. You terrorists killed my great uncle when 9/11 happened." His tone was now more angry than ever. I pleaded with him not to kill me. And he said that my parents were born in America, and that we weren't like them. He didn't listen to me. Instead, he kept holding on to me, still filled with rage inside of him. It started. Tokrian kept yelling like a little girl to let me go, and he still wouldn't listen. In a movie, see knew when a protagonist is saved from the antagonist. Well, that's what happened. Right from behind me, I heard gunshots. Well, turned around and Johnny let goof me. I fell to the ground with my knees touching it. Well, saw a hunter running towards us with a rifle in his hand. He kept shouting, "Let them govern over." He was now feet away from us. Shouted again. And this time he said, "Get the hell out of here, you scram." This was directed at Frankie and Johnny. They both ran and disappeared out of sight. He then walked slowly at us and asked us if we were all right. We said we were okay, and we thanked him for saving us. She then asked us who those 2 punks were. We told him the truth and said they were school bullies of mine, and they somehow managed to follow us from the city to upstate. The man was in disbelief. Hearing this, he then offered us a ride home, and we accepted his offer. We got home in 10 to 15 minutes, and they allowed the man to come inside the house. As she was our witness, we walked through the door, and my mother asked, "Who is this?" My parents were pretty confused at that moment, and I don't blame them. Ized said that this guy saved us from the 2 bullies who regularly harassed me at school. They didn't seem to believe what I said at first, as they looked very suspicious. But we told my parents the story. After telling them the story, their moods had now shifted to beyond horrified. They were in shock. Hearing all of this, and they told me Jaden and the man to all go to the police station to report this, and I couldn't have agreed more. We got to the station. Jaden and the hunter all told the investigator the events that went down. As my parents were waiting in the lobby, they thanked us. and told us that they would try to get in contact with our school board back in the city. Hearing them say this put me in a much better mood that night, and the next day was just pretty chill. We didn't do anything, and we went back to the city Sunday late afternoon. I was still a little shaken up by the incident, but I was able to calm down the next day. Then came and it was Monday. I was called into the principal's office, and I was told that Frankie and Johnny had both been expelled after what they did to me and Jaden. I was so happy to hear this, as both of those two would not have to bother me anymore. The rest of my school years went pretty smoothly every once. In a while I would get called names like terrorists, but it never came to physical bullying again, and I didn't take it too personally because we were all still Norung kids and never saw or heard from Johnny. Again, I saw Frankie one last time in 2019 on a street. I was walking on a sidewalk, and he was walking the other way on the same sidewalk. He didn't even look at me as if he was too scared to us off. Today, nobody has made fun of me for being a Muslim as New York City has become more liberal. I eventually got over this incident, but whenever I see someone online or in person saying bad things about Muslims, the memory of what happened almost a decade ago plays back in my head and serves as a reminder that there will always be screwed up people in this world. I was 21 back in 2019 and I worked during the day at a place called Coconuts Car Wash in Flagler County, Florida. I didn't go to college because I couldn't afford it. My boss wasn't exactly the friendliest person, but he paid me a respectable amount of money and I got along with almost everyone at work except one guy who made me quit my job that year because of his creepy advancements towards meth. This guy's name was Nicholas Sesson, and he was 25 years old. He started working at the car wash at the beginning of that year. At first, he seemed like he was a safe person to talk to. He acted polite and he made eye contact with me when we had conversations. We exchanged each other's social media and it was normal at first. In March, has started acting more creepy towards me. He would keep touching me every chance that he could get. He would say he was doing it accidentally, but I wasn't dense, and I knew earlier when I would see one. He would also keep messaging me on Instagram format to go out with him. I kept telling him that I wasn't interested, but he didn't take the hint. I was now feeling unsafe. I couldn't stand being in the same area as that creeper. It tried to talk with the manager about this, but it was so rude and has said to Meth that I have to deal with my own problems. I had noon to talk to my parents, weren't that loving to me. I didn't have enough money to go and talk about this with a therapist. My other coworkers claimed that they were too busy to talk to. I was alone. Nick's behavior started to get even worse. He went on social media harassing me with disgusting love notes one night. This finally reached a boiling point. I was just coming out of the shower with my bathrobe on and the shades to me window were left open. I caught a quick glance outside for a brief second, turned away for half a second, and then turned my head in that same direction again. What I saw was pure terror. The outside street lights provided a clear view only to see me creepy coworker. Nick outside of my house is sitting on what I assumed to be his bike right as she saw me heptal off away from my house until I couldn't see him anymore. How did he even know where I lived? I never told him my home address and I never hung out with him outside of work. That was it. I went to my phone and blocked him. One everything after that I emailed my boss and told him that I was quitting because of Nick's advancements. I complained to my boss on many different occasions, but had nothing. And the only way to end this was if I left after I finished, that I went to bed. Then I hoped that it would be the end. But the truth is it wasn't, and it kept getting worse from here. The next morning, I woke up and I saw a bunch of Instagram DM messages from an account that I did not recognize. I opened that app and it was obviously Nick actually made another account because I blocked him. The messages looked really torrent and did not make any sense. This made me very uncomfortable in nature. He also did the same for Snapchat. I blocked him on both apps again. Now this was before you could block someone on Instagram and new accounts that they created or have the whole next 2 days she would keep making more accounts, and I was still blocking them in all honesty. I was not surprised. Nick had become such a nuisance that I decided that I would disable my social media accounts because he was borderline stalking Meth that night. I heard a knock at my front door. It had to have been Nick. I walked over to the door and looked through the peephole, and this confirmed that it was in fact them. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make it aware that I was home despite all the lights being on, and my car was parked in the driveway. He kept knocking, and he finally said something. He said that he would not leave, and if I didn't open the door and give him an explanation, we would have a problem right there. And then I gathered the courage to say to him through the closed door that my father had owned a gun. It then got my phone out and called 911. I connected to an operator and told every detail over the phone. It stayed on the line until the police got there. A police car pulled up right in front of my house, and I saw 3 officers step out of the cart. They came in. and it told them everything that transpired after this. They left, and they were able to locate where Nick lived. They didn't arrest him, but they warned him to leave me alone. It thought this would do something, but of course, Nick didn't listen. In fact, the next morning, the police caught Thimby King on his way to my house. This time they arrested him, and he was taken to the police station. He was put in an interrogation room where Head admitted some very disturbing things. She confessed that he had been outside of my house multiple times for the past 2 months and collected photos that I'd posted online. This made me feel like my world was crumbling into pieces. Why would he still think that I would date him after? It told him no many times. Nicky's currently facing a felony charge of burglary of a dwelling and a misdemeanor stalking charge. He's looking to face up to 15 years in prison and $11,000 in fines when he gets released from prison. I highly doubt that he will still be obsessed with me and will be able to put it past him. I just hope that I'm right about that. It was a bright sunny afternoon, the kind where the world feels too normal for anything strange to happen. I was with my 2 friends, Jamie and Linda, standing at the edge of the old abandoned St. Luke's Hospitalith had been shut down for decades as a crumbling building with shattered windows and peeling paint. Yet the town was still full of rumors about it. Some said the place was haunted by the spirits of children who never left, while others swore they'd seen lights flickering inside even during the day. None of us really believed it, but the stories had a way of getting under our skin. Jamie, always the daring one, dared us to go inside. It's broad daylight, he said with a grin. What's the worst? That could happen. Linda hesitated, but I could tell she didn't want to. Look scared in front of him. I didn't want to admit how uneasy the place made me, so I shrugged and said, all right, let's do it. We pushed open the heavy front doors, their hinges groaning like something alive inside. The air was stale and cold, a sharp contrast to the sunny day. Outside, dust motes floated in the dim light streaming through the broken windows. The tiled floor was cracked, and every step we took dearly through the empty halls despite the daylight. Shadows seemed to gather in the corners, stood dark and too still. We wandered through the hospital, joking and laughing nervously to mask our discomfort. The walls were covered in graffiti, most of it crude drawings and swear words, but some of it was unsettling, scrawled messages like they're still here and don't look back. Linda pointed at one that said, we heart them play, and laughed uneasily. Kids must have been bored. She muttered, we found ourselves in what must have once been the pediatric wing. The small room showed rusted beds and faded murals of smiling animals on the walls. It felt wrong, like we shouldn't be there, but none of us said anything. Jimmy picked up a stuffed bear from the floor, its fur matted and its eyes missing, and made a joke about it being haunted. I forced a laugh, but my skin prickled. That's when we heard a faint sound coming from down the hall. It was high-pitched and cheerful, like children laughing. At first, it thought I imagined it, but then Linda turned to me, her face paled. Do you hear that? She said. Jamie shrugged, trying to look unimpressed. It's probably the wind or something, but the sound didn't stop, got louder, as if whoever or whatever was laughing was getting closer. The laughter was strange too, like it didn't belong here. It was too light, too happy to live for a place like this. My chest tightened, but I told myself it was just an echo, maybe from kids outside. Then we heard something else ease off, creak like a wheel turning. Well, turned toward the sound, and that's when we saw it. A medical trolley was moving down the hallway. It rolled slowly, its wheels squeaking, and then stopped just a few feet from us. None of us had touched it. The hallway was completely still, no breeze, none else around, but the trolley moved on its own. It stopped right in front of the door we had entered, blocking the way out. It froze. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Maybe the floor was, and even maybe it was some kind of prank, but I knew none of that made sense. Jamie walked toward it, trying to act brave. All right, who's messing with us? She called out, his voice shaking slightly. He grabbed the trolley and tried to push it aside, but it didn't budge. It was like it had fused with the floor. Jimmy stepped back, his confidence fading. The laughter started again, but this time it wasn't distant. It was close, too close. It sounded like it was coming from the rooms around us. Small, light footsteps padded down the hall, though we couldn't see anyone. Let's go, Linda said, her voice trembling. This isn't funny anymore. We turned to leave, but the trolley still blocked the door. Jimmy shoved it, again grunting with effort, but it wouldn't move. Then we heard the voices come play with use. A child's voice called sweet and sing-song. I chode through the hall, and I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Another voice joined in, this one quieter almost, whispering, we've been waiting for you. My heart hammered in my chest. I looked at Linda and Jamie, and I could see the terror on their faces. It wasn't a prank. This wasn't some trick of the wind or an old building settling. Something was here. The laughter turned into giggles, then whispers, then crying. It was everywhere, surrounding us. The sound filled my head, growing louder and louder, until I couldn't think. Jimmy grabbed my eyes wide. We have to find another way. Of said, his voice barely above a whisper. We're not caring where we were going, just desperate to get away from the voices as the hospital seemed to twist and change around us. Hallways stretched longer than they should have, and doors that had been opened were suddenly locked. The air grew colder and the light streaming through the windows dimmed as if the sun itself had abandoned us. We found a stairwell and bolted down at our footsteps, echoing like gunshots. At the bottom we found a side door, its rusted lock hanging loose. Jamie yanked it open and Wes stumbled out into the blinding daylight. For a moment none of us spoke. We just stood there, breathing hard, staring back at the hospital. It looked the same as before, silence still crumbling in the afternoon sun. But I knew we hadn't imagined it. I could still hear the voices, faint and distant, as if they were watching us from the windows. We didn't talk about what happened as we walked back to town. No jokes, no dares, nothing. It was like the place had taken something from us, our confidence, our curiosity, maybe even a part of our sanity. This happened a long time ago, back in 1989. I hope I can tell the story in a way that conveys just how bad this scared me. I still don't know what it really was or what happened, so I make no claims about the explanation. I still think about this. Sometimes I was 19 years old and working in an after-school care that was running out of the building of a small church in the rural southern town where I lived. The church was small and shaped like an L, with a door at the top of the sanctuary, at the elbow of the land, a door at the short end of the. There was also a full basement that was furnished and used for the Sunday school rooms, where the kids from the after-school program did homework and played games. Sometimes there were only about 12 or 13 kids in the program most of the time, and I think in a time we swelled to something like a hopping 7 because the church was small and the community was small. There were no aspirations to have a large program, and the entire thing was really to provide a service to parents in the church. What I would do every weekday was attend community college classes in the morning, and then go straight from classes to the church and work on homework, or read until the kids were dropped off by the school bus. I usually had between 2 to 5 hours, either completely alone in the church, or sometimes the pastor would stop by and work in his office, but mostly I was alone. I never heard or anything at all, and I was locked inside the building so no one could come, and even when the kids were there, the doors stayed locked for safety. I did this for a fully year in a summer, and then these year, my best friend at the time to work with me, she and I were both pretty serious kids in the sense that we didn't drink or do drugs. We weren't into anything occult or spooky. Just normal young girls who went to college classes and went to work one day. Not too long after she started working with me, I had the kids in the basement playing games while some of them worked on homework. The deal was that one of us would prepare snacks in the kitchen upstairs, while the other one entertained the kids. She was upstairs, making a snack, when all of a sudden I heard the door at the top of the basement stairs open, and she came running down the stairs calling my name. I could hear the fear in her voices, so I met her at the bottom of the stairs, and she was scared. She was not one to be dramatic at all, and I had never seen her scared before, and I'd known her since the 8th grade. I asked her what was wrong, and she said in a trembling voice that she'd heard someone in the sanctuary. Is Ed what now? We were here by ourselves, it must be your imagination. But she was adamant that she heard someone upstairs in the sanctuary, and she was scared to death again. I told her she must be mistaken, and she said, I'm not kidding. There's somebody up there moving around in the sanctuary, and I saw something. I don't know what it was. The sanctuary in the elbow of the shape of the church was right beside the kitchen where she'd been preparing snacks. I was a brave kid and had more bravery than brains at the time. I told her to stay in the basement with the kids, and that I was going up to check it out. That scared her as well, and she told me not to go. It was a stupid thing for Metod, considering that if someone had been up there, I could have been attacked, and I really wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. But anyway, I went up to the top of the stairs, stuck my head out the door, and first made sure Noon was in the hallway. Next, I checked all of the Sunday school rooms down the long arm of the along with the pastor's office. I found nothing, so by this time I was sure she'd heard the wind. It was fall and windy, or heard the foundation of the building settle, and it's pooped her next. Next, I checked the bathrooms at the short end of the land, made sure that all of the doors to the building were locked. Noon had come into the building since we got there, and the doors had been locked when I arrived that day, so I was absolutely sure we were alone. Next, I walked up to the door of the sanctuary and looked through the small window at the top of the door and saw nothing. There was a row of pews on each side of the sanctuary, a pulpit up front, and on the left side of the pulpit was a closed door that led to the choir areas. So I opened one of the doors and walked into the sanctuary and slowly made my way up to about halfway of the pews, and I stopped and looked around. Everything was dead silent. I said, hello, is there anybody here? Hello. And just as I finished saying that, the door to the left-hand side of the pulpit slowly swung all the way open. I can't really put into words the feeling that hit my body. The blood drained down out of my torso and into my legs, which both tried to run and were bolted to the floor. At the same time, a jolt of adrenaline surged through my body, and at the same time, I felt like I was moving in slow motion as it turned and bolted out of the sanctuary and down the stairs, yelling to get the kids out of the building. We got the kids out back and debated what to do. This was the time before self. Soon of us still had to go back inside and call the pastor to come down, or well had to stand outside and wait for a parent or someone from the church to come by and check things out, which could be every long time. I went back inside to the pastor's office and quickly used the phone to K his house and asked for someone to come by. When the church was searched, nothing was found, and everyone thought we had overactive imaginations like Isaiah in the beginning. They make no claims as to what opened that door or what my friend heard, but something or someone was in that church with us that day, and it never felt comfortable alone there again.